Well, welcome everyone to the final session of the 2012 online conference on 21st century Lutheran education. We're finishing the conference this year with a panel discussion. You may actually notice that we have almost more panelists present than we do participants. That's okay. One of the things that's kind of neat about the conference is that we get a modest number of participants in the live session, but every session gets recorded, and then those recordings become a sort of learning object that gets disseminated and passed on and used and reused and reviewed by people. There are schools that will use these recordings as part of their weekly or monthly faculty meetings and professional development. There are principals who require that teachers listen to so many of these over the course of a semester and then apply the concepts in their classrooms and incorporate them into their professional development. There are conferences, live face-to-face conferences, that actually replay these recordings and have panels that discuss them. There's a wide variety of uses out there for these sessions. So by being a participant, you're not only participating and benefiting from the live session, but you're literally creating a learning object, a resource that will be used by others down the road. We get hundreds of viewers of some of these sessions over the course of a year. We have recordings going back 4 years now. So for our final session this year, we have a panel discussion. And the people who are sort of formally identified as the panelists, you will see on the attendee list on this side, Amanda, Dan, Kevin, and Rob. We also have a couple of others that may be joining us. However, this is a pretty egalitarian, this is a pretty democratic group. So everyone, please feel free to contribute and share ideas and resources and suggestions. What I thought we could do for our final session this year is explore this topic, 21st century professional development for the Lutheran educator. And I'm going to do that thing you're not supposed to do and actually read the words word for word here for a moment. But you'll notice on the side it says Twittering, Facebook, Google Docs, Digo, Pinterest, online webinars, collaborative lesson plans, online courses. We could extend that list quite a bit. All of these are powerful tools for networking with and learning from educators around the world. So what we're going to do for this final discussion is we're going to explore how we can leverage social media, emerging technology for professional development, for collaboration and partnership with Lutheran schools around the United States and around the world. And this will give us a chance to explore. So what I thought we could do is have a simple kind of structure. One is, what are you doing to connect and partner right now? The panelists were intentionally chosen because they're pretty active in the social media world as well, or already. What are some promising practices that you see in the larger field of education and the larger digital world that we might want to consider adopting? And what are some future possibilities for us that we might want to concern? I think just those three questions alone will probably be enough to get this group to take off. So let's start, and we can go in any order that we want. We don't have to make this too formal. But what are the things that for our panelists, we'll get started, and others, please feel free to jump in and type or speak as well. But what are the things that you're doing right now that are helping you with your professional development and your growth? And in particular, let's focus on some things that make use of emerging technology and social media.
Go ahead and jump in first. This is Rob Jacklin. Probably the thing that has been the most significant for me has probably been my use of Twitter, but currently I'm actually trying a little bit more delving into the area of Google+. It's been interesting, but I still am tied back to Twitter. Probably the thing for me that absolutely just sealed it in my understanding of ACE professional development anyways, and I think the more teachers I talk to, the more just a blatant understanding really just has to happen. And I don't really know when this time was for me. Maybe it was through the Midwest Educational Technology Conference, but just in my own mind as an educator, it was sealed and locked in that I had to be responsible for my own professional development. And then from there, once I had that, kind of come to Jesus meeting or moment with myself, that's when the whole idea of me being in charge and me choosing an environment that worked for me. And the one that really got me was actually Twitter, and just the idea of just the number of voices that are there, um, the an eclectic number of voices, but they're there. They're just kind of challenging and kind of pushing, and that you can add and you can take away has been a really neat thing. Another piece that's pretty overwhelming, especially with something like Twitter, is that it just think of it like a stream. If you if you go by the stream, when you step in the stream, you're wet and you're there, but there are going to be times when you step out of the stream. But it's always going to be there when you get done. You can step back in and there'll always be something there. So for me personally, Twitter's been a pretty huge piece, but I'm dabbling and trying to move into Google+.
I'm gonna.
Ironically, we have people tweeting as we're talking.
I go in what Rob said about Twitter, and what I tell people is with Twitter, it's user controlled. You can listen, you can lurk, or you can converse with people as much as you want. I kind of compare it to email. If I have my inbox full of messages each day, I feel like I have to go through each one of those messages. I may make a decision to delete or to deal with it later or reply, but Twitter it would be impossible to keep up with every single thing that comes across the Twitter stream. So like Rob said, you can be a part of it one day and the next day you don't have to be a part of it. And then when you do choose to be a part of it, what it's done for me is it's opened up the world to me. And as Rob said, there are probably millions of educators out there, thousands of educators that are on Twitter, and it gives you an opportunity to connect with people that you never would have had a chance to collaborate with people you may not have had a chance to, and then have conversations that really help to push you and help you grow as an educator.
Do I really have 8,000 tweets?
I just looked. I was amazed. Yes.
Well, one thing I talked about yesterday during my presentation, just using the Twitter and following everybody in this room that I follow have been a great source of resource. Also with the Digo, using that. Rob Jacklin started that whole Ning site with technology in Lutheran school. One thing I didn't talk about during my presentation that I don't use it as much anymore, but is Second Life. I used to every Wednesday would go in there for the Discovery Educators workshops, and that was a big help too.
Something that has been a little different for me, I did get started with Twitter, but probably of all of the things that are listed there, the one that I use the most now is probably Pinterest, which is probably a lot different than a lot of the guys, because I think a lot of people see Pinterest as more of a craft place and recipe place. But I have found tons of resources to use for my classroom and ideas of projects to do with my kids. And I'm starting to get more into seeing some of the technology things. I don't think I'm quite following the right people on Pinterest yet to get good resources, but I think that is some place that some people who maybe are a little more nervous about the Twitter or other things like that might be a little more willing to try something like Pinterest, because it's very easy, because it's all pictures, and so it's easy to find things that you're interested in.
I'll kind of echo that on Pinterest. Ironically enough, it's just something kind of interesting. There's some of our in our building, the group that Pinterest really took off in was our preschool teachers, and I don't know if it's the picture piece that's there, but some of those teachers who are just kind of scared of certain things, like, oh gosh, I don't know that I would do this or do that. All of a sudden, they're talking, well, I've pinned this in Pinterest, and I found this lesson or I found this idea. Our resource teacher here at St. John too is actually compiling lists of summer activities for students. And she's like, yeah, I was in Pinterest today. But yeah, I think you're right, Amanda. And I don't at all intend to be sexist about it. But I do find, for example, on our staff, it is mostly female teachers who have actually found that. But I think so there's that piece. But I think there's another piece too that I think it goes to with when it comes to professional development, the idea that someone can find something of interest. So for example, we have a core group of teachers who really enjoy cooking. So they heard about Pinterest and the amount of recipes that were there were, they found out were just tremendous. And while I was there, oh, I also found this preschool teacher did this thing. So for them, it was, there's that old adage of if you want a teacher to be really good at something, connect it to them personally. So I think, on our staff, I know Pinterest has really kind of taken off too. To kind of echo exactly what you said.
Increased use of Pinterest just points out that one of the great things about social media is that there's just about something for anybody. I mean, you can use Twitter for professional development. You can use Pinterest for professional development. I know people who connect with other teachers through Facebook for professional development. We just heard Dan talk about Second Life. I had never heard about that. I know Google Plus is being used more and more. So I think one thing that's important for teachers to know is that first of all, you don't have to use all these tools. You can probably find one of these social media tools that will fit your needs.
I think that's kind of what goes into some of the promising practices. A lot of teachers, on our staff hear us talking about some of these things and they think, oh, how am I going to have the time to stay in touch with Twitter and Facebook and everything else that's out there. And it's important to remind them that you don't have to be involved all the time and you don't have to be involved with everything. Like you said, Kevin, you can take it when you need it.
I'll echo what Amanda just said. I tell my teachers, find something that you like and that you're comfortable with, and use it. And use it for professional development. If it's Twitter, it's Twitter. If it's not, it's not. Find something though, and keep learning.
It is interesting to be able to kind of meld some of these together. For example, I know for me personally, I just tend to be a sharer. And the thing I'm most consistent about are sharing bookmarks in Digo. So for example, when I run across websites, I was like, oh, I think other teachers would use this. So I'm going to bookmark that in Digo. So for example, for me, a huge push for that too in terms of social bookmarking and trying to share resources. So I try to couple some of these things together. And I think when you start to couple them together, or do we just pick one, the social part of the social media is really important because really we're not talking about technology, we're talking about connecting with people, because that's the whole point. So for example, the people who are in this group, like even for example like Tim, I follow you on Twitter, and people who who bookmark things or people who post links. The important part about the social media is that you really do wind up creating a network of people. So I can't be on Twitter all the time. But for example, I follow a group of Lutheran teachers. So if there's something that's there, they may find it and they're going to make sure that I know about it. So I don't have to be on all the time. But like you said before, it's not just one thing, or it's not all of them. It's one thing. But the idea that you can connect with people and then you begin to trust those people and develop relationships with them. It's like I had developed relationships with Dave Black and with Dan. I still have never met Dan face to face, but we could carry on a conversation and talk about those things. We have some side relationship, the same with Dave Black, who hopefully will join us here in a little bit. But that you can trust other people in a network in the social media, and that you can begin to work together and trust that you can share together.
Actually used our Skyping incident, the one when I first got to California, Grace Lancaster, and then Dave Black came in during my presentation, so it was I had a good laugh, for myself during my presentation.
Another very valuable aspect of social media for me has been connecting specifically with Lutheran educators. And I think each of our Lutheran schools are independent in a lot of ways, and they they make a lot of local decisions, and they're autonomous in many ways. But we also have the same mission, and social media allows us, through sharing resources, through connecting, through having conversations. It's given me a big more of a sense of being in a ministry with more than just the people in my building. Lutheran education is much bigger than just my school. This is a ministry that we're all in together.
Even for me, for Twitter, I have some of the higher Lutheran ed people that I like to follow have their text messages, their tweets come right to my phone, so I don't miss anything that you guys say that are very important.
I'm curious, do you guys find, I know I find personally that I like to kind of balance my connection with people in the Lutheran world. I sometimes find myself using a lot of these tools to sort of broaden my horizons and connect with people in circles that I typically wouldn't see or interact with. Can you guys speak a little bit to sort of that mix of interacting with other Lutheran educators and then also using these tools to really just to kind of push the boundaries and get out there? I know, for example, I do the weekly connected learning webinars, and Howard Rheingold leads many of those. Any comments about that?
Sure. I was going to say, about halfway through, I think I may have lost my connection. I think I got through what yours was in terms of talking about the balance and getting to know the balance of Lutheran educators from non. Ironically enough, I started doing as early as I could. I started teaching back in 1998. So probably the social media stuff for me started back around in 2001. And really, the only people who I knew were doing things were non-Lutheran educators. So it's been very, very exciting for me as Twitter goes on to see more and more Lutheran educators come on. So it's becoming easier to do that. But yeah, I still find today that some of the more boisterous or the more pushing voices, I guess I could kind of say, or the more progressive voices in terms of teaching and learning tend to be non-Lutherans. But it's been good to come back and take some of those ideas and to kind of fish them out in Untitled Lutheran circles and kind of say, hey, what do you think about this? So for me, the non-Lutheran aspect of the education has been really, or of my professional learning network has been really important because it's really pushed me in my thinking, my understanding to kind of bring that back in and being as discerning as possible, to separate the wheat from the chaff, but not throw out the baby with the bathwater when it comes to an idea. So.
Yeah, I would agree the same. That's a lot of what I've gotten from the Ed Chat, the weekly Ed Chats. I think it's still on Tuesdays. I actually haven't participated in probably almost a year and a half since I went to full-time preschool. But you're able to get the opinions of other educators and kind of understand where they're coming from. And I think the public schools do tend to be a little bit further ahead of us when it comes to technology and implementing technology in their classrooms. At least the ones who are on Twitter, we're able to kind of find out what they're doing and what we should be doing.
I would probably be so bold as to say, just real quick as it's going on, most of the, we're talking about educational reform in general. I first started hearing about educational reform back from the ed tech community, ironically enough. So it's kind of interesting that the ed tech community was the kind of the introduction piece for me into the whole education reform movement and looking at pedagogy and transforming classrooms. So that's just, they do tend to be a pretty progressive bunch.
Some experiences getting to know some educators on Twitter back when I was in Missouri who were local in the state as well, and through Twitter and connecting that way, and then going to conferences within the state, I actually got to know some of those educators personally, and got to meet with them face to face. So social media is, I mean, it knocks down the walls to your building. it opens up the world to you. So, definitely one of the benefits is stepping outside of our Lutheran bubble, and we can learn a lot from any educator all over the world.
Amanda, just very quickly, for those who may not know about it, can you talk a little briefly about how a Twitter chat works, like the Ed chat, for those who maybe haven't experienced that part of Twitter before?
Sure. There's lots of different chats that go on. I know there's also a Kinder chat that I think takes place on Mondays. And I know there's a schedule out there and there's a link to it. I think it's in a Google document of all the different times of chats. But the way it works is people just get on Twitter at the same time, and you use a hashtag. So whatever the chat is called, that's usually the hashtag that's used. So you use the hashtag of EdChat, and I believe the time, and someone else can jump in and say if they know for sure. Tuesdays at 11 and I think it's 6 Central Time are the Ed Chat. But it's just a way. Usually there's some sort of question or thing that they're going to be discussing for that day, and it's usually put out ahead of time so that you can have your ideas ready or resources ready. But then you can just log in and see what people are saying. You don't have to participate at all. You can just follow the hashtag, or you can just or you can participate as well.
To add on to what Amanda was saying, there are specific times where that EdChat discussion takes place on Tuesdays, but you can follow that hashtag at any time, and that conversation will be continuing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, you can search EdChat on Twitter, and you will see there will always be a conversation going on about education. And then there's a ton of hashtags. So like she said with KinderChat, if you did a search for KinderChat at any time of the day, you would find conversation and resources that dealt with kindergarten. And if you would Google Twitter educational hashtags or something like that, you would be able to pretty easily find a list of all the different hashtags on Twitter that apply to education.
Definitely one of the things that makes following hashtags a lot easier also is using something other than just the Twitter application. Using TweetDeck, that's really what I use and I find the most useful, because you can have a column that's devoted to those hashtags, and it makes it a lot easier to find those resources rather than trying to look through Twitter feeds or doing a search just on Twitter.
Am I correct though that after a while the tweets on a hashtag they do delete though, or am I wrong on that?
I'm not sure about that. That's a good question.
I think it is good to come back to. I think distinctly what Lutheran educators pride themselves on or drive themselves on is on relationship with people. And I think the really cool thing about things like Twitter is just a reminder that you're talking with people, that that where you have this medium and this barrier there. But I've actually known some teachers who have said that they've shied away from something like Twitter. But it is interesting the type of relationships that you can begin to develop with those people, because you're not really it's almost like you feel, because it's text, that you're developing a relationship with someone. That it's kind of secondary, but it's amazing what happens when you follow someone and you tweet back and forth and you wind up having somewhat of a conversation, even if it is 140 characters at a time. But you actually do wind up developing really good positive relationships. And to add this piece on top of there is what you notice is when you begin to develop your own personal practice with this, you tend to see this bleeding into your classroom practice. So it's not just, hey, let me know what you think about this, but now we're sharing lessons, now you're sharing links, and those things wind up having a direct impact on your instruction, which is kind of the whole point.
I'll just say welcome, Dave.
Yes, Dave, let me give you some superpowers so you can speak. Dave, we're dealing with our first question, which is really just about what are we doing right now in terms of making use of social media and emerging technologies to connect with others and to grow professionally. I'm curious, are any of you involved in sort of private communities or courses? I, for example, participated in the massive open online course out of Athabasca University that was focused on learning analytics. There is a Haystack, Humanities, Arts, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Communications group that's sort of a private group. Anyone have sort of private groups like that you participate in that are helpful?
Well, it's kind of like a private group, even though you're part of it, Dr. Bold, our old friends group, which is a bunch of educators and theologians getting together to share everything and anything. And what I get most out of that group is the prayers and knowing that I could come to these people for anything, and they'll say prayers for me. They'll lift me up and be there for me. So that's probably my favorite private group.
How about we have a lot of like sharing resources. Are any of you participating in any kind of collaborative work, like where you're doing work? Your classrooms are connecting, or you're building resources, or doing things together and sharing things that actually curriculum that you're writing, or anything like that. Have you? And this could maybe be some promising practices, things you see happening elsewhere, or things that you're doing.
Our school this past year went to Google Apps for Education, and so it's been very powerful, and it's a little slow to catch on for everyone, but for us to be able to plan something without actually having to all be together. Our early childhood department uses it a lot. We have a lot of people who have young children that we have a hard time meeting, but we've been able to plan our grandparents' days and things like that by just having an online document that we can all collaborate on and not actually have to meet, or maybe meet once or twice. So I think that's been very powerful for us to be able to start using Google Docs and online documents to share things.
Sorry I'm late, everyone. Hopefully y'all can hear me just fine. I've enjoyed collaborating with some other classrooms, creating what we call primary source sets. Sets of images that have a common theme but also have some sort of individual image where you would have to do some investigation as well. Now, for instance, I had a student put together a primary source set on Blackbeard's boat, which sunk off the coast of North Carolina, and he had all these different images, but there was no labeling to them. So students had to do the investigation of those images, as well as figure out what the common theme is, and then to be able to take that student work and share that with another school and have another school have their students create primary source sets, some of them having to do with the geography of their area, and then bringing that back. It's done a lot for the internet search skills of my students. It's done a lot for their inquiry and questioning as well.
I'd say, I don't know if there's been a little bit of a barrier since, I don't know if it'd probably be safe to say this, but I mean, the adoption of a lot of these technologies across um, Lutheran education, I think has been really pretty slow. Not excluding some of the people who are in this who are here so far. But I know when Ning first came out, and I created the Technology in Lutheran Schools Ning, that anybody could create one, so they were for free. I mean, currently it's a paid service currently, but if you could create one, and as soon as we found that out and we started sharing things, I had our first grade teachers were like, "That's it, I'm going to create a first grade teacher's name. We're going to find a social network for Lutheran schools for first grade teachers," and they had a really hard time getting people to want to buy into that. So there's so even though some of these pieces are there, just trying to get people to trust them has been a pretty interesting endeavor too.
Well, feel free to jump into this. I think maybe we kind of are already, but what are some promising practices that you see out there as you're kind of looking around the digital landscape and seeing the way that educators are interacting within or outside of Lutheran and Christian education? Any thoughts about that?
Personally, I feel I know my students better than ever this year by flipping the classroom a number of times throughout the week, by having a lot more guided practice, a lot more guided writing within the classroom than I ever had before. And that's really helped me focus not just on those students that may be some struggling learners, but also challenge my high flyers in some different way and really being aware of the needs that they might have to continue to be challenged in writing and in research and in all areas of their study.
I think teachers also have to get out of their bubbles a little bit, not be afraid of to trying something new and breaking their walls down in their classroom. I know that can be difficult. I have some teachers here that are difficult to take that first initial step, and trying to, as an administrator, I'm trying to help them to take that step and to make them feel safe when they do take that step.
Along with what Dan just said, with being risk takers, that they can't be afraid to fail, and so I think part of that responsibility is on the administrators to encourage teachers to try new methods or try new technologies, knowing that it may not work or they may fail, or knowing that they're going to be more of the guide on the side, and they're going to be working right alongside with the students. And there may be even times where the students are bringing the teachers along instead of the teachers bringing the students along.
So yeah, probably one of the most promising practices of I think I mentioned this before a little bit, but I think everybody here kind of see the fruits of this is that when we as teachers begin to feel comfortable working with some of these technologies, then what happens is we wind up translating those down to the students, and that's the greatest kind of trickle down effect that we've noticed. I very rarely, or very, or I'd say often, I'll catch myself getting a tweet and I'll show my students this, or I'll actually take them to Twitter and show them my account. So they're becoming involved and seeing, not just seeing it work, but seeing a positive piece. I think that's the thing we're missing too. Is people always wonder why students misuse this, and I wonder if it's because they don't ever see a positive use of it. So trying to model really good social media use has become really an important part. So that's a promising practice, is that if we as teachers and as educators can begin to model really good use, then we can have some of those conversations with students, and so we really can truly begin to model that and bring kids into, effectively bring them into the future, not just bring them in.
One thing that's not really a promising practice, but going on what Rob does in his classroom, I can remember when I was teaching third grade, he would stream some of his lessons or presentations that the kids were doing, and I would throw it up there for my kids to just sit back and watch and listen. Kind of gave us a little different feel for the day, but they were also learning from other students in themselves. And I believe they were probably what, sixth or seventh grade students, Rob.
They actually, I think I've actually stopped doing that, and not because I don't want them to have an audience, but it's kind of interesting when it comes to presenting. I try to let them present in my technology class before they have to present in front of their teachers, because I'm like, if you're going to fail, fail with me in the room. Don't fail when you actually have to get in front of your teachers. So we've actually stopped doing that, but if I just need to work now on getting the other teachers to now present the polished project. So yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into, we can keep talking about things that are promising, but let's go ahead and let's tackle the big one. What are the possibilities? What are your dreams? What are some things you think are possible that's worth our pursuing in terms of leveraging these social media and emerging technologies for professional development, collaborating with one another across time and space?
Over the last 6 to 9 months, I've become more and more convinced personally that the power of technology in education is going to be the greatest when we really embrace the opportunities to personalize education with students in some very different ways. And maybe that's what I was trying to express with the flipped classroom approach, because in that flipped classroom approach, I'm able to spend a lot more time working individually with students and challenging them in some individual ways. With the tools, with some of the structures that are now possible through through Moodle or through other learning management systems, and through the opportunity to um, embrace not only traditional classroom practices but blended learning environments, and in a different way. I think we're going to make the biggest difference for our kids in the long run when we reach that point of much more personalization, much more embracing the unique gifts that each child has been given, and really working with those gifts. Obviously, there's still some standard things that we work on with students, but really that fits with our theology in Lutheranism as well. Every child is gifted by God. Every child is gifted by God in different ways for service in His kingdom. And that's what excites me for the future.
Uh, Probably what excites me, along with what Dave had said, besides just the ability for it to be personalized, but is the ability to share. Students tend to be motivated the most when they know that the work that they're doing is going to be shared in a large core group. It's funny when you give students an assignment and they will tend to go at it half-heartedly, but as soon as they know it's going to be published or they know it's going to be put out there in the general public, they're like, oh, well, that's a little different. I'm going to work on this a little bit differently now. And it's like, well, I always wonder why. It's like if you're a student who, would you rather write for your teacher? Would you rather write for the world? Or would you rather produce for the world? So I think the greatest possibility now is the whole idea of audience. For many of them, not just audience here, but audience globally. I think for the first time we really do have an opportunity for students to share global pieces. For our students to actually be able to connect and share experiences with people from all over the world. And I don't, for example, where I'm at in the West County, St. Louis, we are really a predominantly, white group. In terms of, we're racially very, very, homogenous, um, and and so for us to be able to break out, I think these technologies, if I can connect with another teacher, then I'm going to eventually wind up connecting my classroom with them as well. So it's important to develop that in practice because, like I said, that practice trickles down. So.
For me, Rob hit it on the nose right at the end there. We've spent a lot of time talking about how we as educators can leverage social media and technology tools for professional development. And I'm excited about the potential for all of our teachers to be able to use social media, and then seeing that have a trickle-down effect to our students, and seeing instruction and learning improved. And then Dave and Rob both touched on it. One of the phrases that I use a lot is authentic learning experiences. We want our students to have opportunities where they can connect and create and solve problems. It's using these tools to really make learning authentic for the students. I'm going to add one more thing to that too. Is I think another possibility too is allowing our students to contribute. I think that's a good word to have in our minds. Is helping our students to contribute to solve problems at their school or in their community. Have them contribute to the learning of other students. Have them contribute and be a part of the ministry of Lutheran schools.
To kind of follow up there too, just I think what Kevin had talked about, you tend to think of it in terms of the word control. I think teachers tend to be pretty controlling of their classroom, um, especially, but I think sometimes we equate control of our classroom, and we do that, we control learning too. And I think as teachers, when we begin to relinquish a little bit of the control of the learning that happens, not control of the classroom, and I'm not talking about classroom management, but I mean just in control and enable. I think the greatest possibility is these technologies will enable students to really take their learning. Like David said, it's personalized. So now they've enabled personalization. We can now begin to customize it. So this technology allows customization. So it really pushes learning even a little bit farther into the future.
And going with that, Rob, I think it's the job of the administrator, the principals, to make sure that teachers feel comfortable to give up some of that control, and that it's a little chaos for learning is okay.
To go along with the poll that's gone up, how much do you think digital revolution will transform schools and even instruction? I think it's transforming it a tremendous amount. It's so much to the point that there are some schools that you walk into school and I don't even know that you'd recognize it as a school. When I talked with Dr. Bull, there was an MTM cohort out in California. We had gone to one of the high schools, and you had said that you'd been spending so much time in in project-based learning schools. and some of these other different schools, that it was interesting for you to kind of get back to look at a more traditional model of education. But I think as you look at these things, I think the education as a whole will just be absolutely transformed beyond, beyond the way we were taught to teach. And I think that's been a huge thing too.
Well, group, you have the ability to have the final say for the 2012 conference on matters of professional development, innovation, and education, the future of Lutheran education. Everything's on the table. So I'm going to give you guys all one last shot. If you want to tackle or highlight or emphasize something that's part of the theme of our discussion here, or you even want to go a little bit further, let's give people one last chance.
I think one of the most important things for people, and that people who aren't even listening to this, when we go back to our schools or go back to your other teachers and talk with them, is just reminding them and encouraging them that, there's always a place to start, and there's always a place to learn more, and that's what we have to do as educators. It's not our job just to teach our students and to help them learn. Our job is also for us to continue to learn, and that's something I think some teachers aren't ready to do, but it's something that we have to do. We have to stay current, and we have to continue to inspire our students, and to do that we have to be continuing learners.
It's almost like you take a Matthew 28 approach. Jesus told his disciples to go. You can't. You're not staying where you are. You're going and you're moving. And it's one of those deals too. There's a phrase that has stuck with me, and I don't remember where I first heard it, but what stuck with me is that as teachers, your job is to prepare students for their future, not your past. And I would love it if someone could remind me who said that, but that has really stuck with me. I think I'm going to throw this out there too. I know a lot of our Concordia universities are starting to make really great strides in wanting to move forward in terms of preparing students. But we still have student teachers coming out of Concordia universities in the undergraduate program who are not prepared to handle these types of technologies. I know a lot of universities, public and private, are jumping on the bandwagon with graduate courses, which I'm part of and work with, and which is awesome. But I still see a huge push for the Concordias to prepare undergraduate teachers to come out. And I know that I know when you talk to them that there are some issues in terms of accreditation on how they do things, but I think that needs to be, I think you can still follow those mandates, except do them creatively. So that if there's one thing I could say to an administrator at a Concordia somewhere, is that we just need to do a better job of preparing pre-service teachers to come out and live in this world. So those are my 2 cents.
I know that as Lutheran educators, we all want what's best for our students, and we want our students to become lifelong learners. And like Rob said, we want to prepare them for their future. So my encouragement for all Lutheran educators is to be lifelong learners yourself. And we're in a time right now where technology and social media provides just an exceptional opportunity to differentiate the way that you go about your professional development. So be a lifelong learner and find a tool or a resource that works for you to help you learn as much as you can.
We talk a lot about the term collaborate, and we've even had some questions. How do you collaborate with other classrooms or schools or other teachers? I really see collaboration as part of our mission and of our theology. The sharing of the gospel is a collaborative effort. You look at the book of Acts and you see all the collaborators in sharing that gospel around the known world at that time. And each of them had a different niche or a different presentation style or a different way to go about that. And for teachers that may be listening to this, um, each of you has something to offer. And a lot of times I think we think about our school communities as a place where, well, we can collaborate with our colleagues, and the Lord has placed us in this site with specific gifts to help my school. But with the power of the technologies we have available to us today, you have the opportunity to make a difference to other teachers, other students. You have an opportunity to care for the education of students in other places in this country and even around the world. And I believe that God has prepared each of us for this moment with the gifts that He's given us, not just to collaborate in our classroom, not just to collaborate within our building, but to use the gifts that He's given us to make a difference for students in other places as well. And wouldn't it be neat at some point if we have this type of closing session where we have a number of new names and people just jumping on and saying, you know, you're right. We need to be a team, and that team does not have walls anymore. A team for kids and a team for the Lord.
Building off of that, Dave, and I don't know, this going to be sounding condescending or not, but you know, throughout these conferences and usually like on Twitter and other things, it seems like we got a lot of the same people always leading, and we need to get more people on board and get more educators and service staffs to see the importance of this and start taking the lead in their areas of expertise. But I appreciate everybody on this staff and that's on this panel and leading every single day in their schools and online. But I would like to see more and more Lutheran educators working together.
I think we've cast a really compelling and exciting vision for possibilities of the future, and now I guess we all have a collective option of trying to bring this with God's blessing into reality. I will share just briefly that Concordia University, Wisconsin, and in my role here, that we really do have a desire to try to help with this in ways that we can. Many of you know, and some of you have participated in the online programs that we have. But we also, I have hope that in the near future we are going to be expanding into continuing education initiatives and efforts that really leverage emerging technologies. So keep your eyes open for things like massive open online courses, free course offerings, more free webinars, and efforts to help coordinate online initiatives and curriculum development initiatives, open textbook initiatives, and things like that. Who knows, I just stepped into a new role at Concordia as Assistant Vice President of Academics for Adult Continuing and Distance Education. And that's given me the ability to be able to engage people in conversations about this continuing ed part. And so I'm very excited to collaborate with people, those who are in this room, those who may be listening. If you have ideas and you'd like to collaborate, I'm very excited about the possibilities. I do believe that the future of education, including higher education, goes well beyond credits, degrees, and programs. I believe the future of K-12 education goes beyond walls and brick and mortar and classrooms and credits and standards and grades. And if we are all willing to be committed to the non-negotiables of our central mission in Lutheran education, and we're willing to explore some other possibilities, I think there's the possibilities are nearly endless. So I offer my services at Concordia, Wisconsin to help further this conversation and to help and provide resources as possible. Thank you, panel and participants, for participating in this conference all the way to the end. I look forward to your feedback on whether we think this is worth trying again another year, if we want to try doing mini conferences, ongoing webinars, we want to try some other things. Let me know. Give me some feedback. Maybe we can even put together a bit of a think tank that meets on an ongoing basis and works on creating new initiatives or refining these kinds of things. So thank you very much. God's blessings on your weekend.